Hi, my name's Barry Crampton and welcome to another episode of Not the Evangelist News. I want to talk about depreciation today from the other side. We've seen from all the evangelists, all the people who say, no, if you're going to get an EV, get it on a lease, a personal contract purchase, make sure you're not responsible for the residual. And they think that's okay. They think that's, they think they're going to be okay. Well, you may be this time, but what about the other side of the coin? And I'm going to go on to motor dealers tomorrow, how depreciation affects motor dealers and what a catastrophic effect it's having on everybody at the moment. And it's all caused by EVs. Make no mistake, it's being caused by EVs. Nothing else, not COVID, not post-COVID effects. It's not. That's an excuse. It is being caused by EVs. It's being caused because they can't sell enough EVs. Privates aren't buying them. Companies aren't buying them as fast as they should be. And people aren't doing this salary sacrifice as much as they should be to save money. And to be fair, I'm sure they should be. As I've said before, I just sell cars. It doesn't matter to me what make, what model, what colour. If you want, I don't know, a hideous, well actually no, I draw the line at matte cars because they just look horrific. We don't sell matte colour cars, they're garbage. Right, so to get started on the story, I don't like people. It's quite a drawback, really, when you're trying to sell cars, when you don't like people. So I've tried to work around it over the years, and I came across a very, very successful way. I mean, I'll give you two examples how much I don't like people. My girlfriend says I only like cars. She's wrong. I like cars and dogs. And in my favourite bar in Preston, Nico's, for 12 months they used to call me the man who sat in the corner, because I used to sit in the corner, drink my wine with my back to everybody, like I do when I'm on holiday. Usually I wear a hat on holiday so nobody, where you from, how long you here for, all that rubbish. I don't like it. Dog comes up to me, I'll play with a little dog all day. That's the way I am. Probably you think it might be strange, but I'm quite happy, to be fair. So, I get into the car job and people have become harder and harder to deal with. Their expectations have grown higher, unrealistic expectations. And these are the things that the EV shills don't realise that they're doing. They're creating unrealistic expectations for customers. And all that does is cause arguments with car dealers, because they come in. I mean, we sold a car the other day and it's a lovely car. It's great. Now, the chap wants to return it because he says it's got a chemical smell inside it. Well, it was valeted. I'm sure it will wear off, but he can't get over it. He just can't get over it. That's it. It's a deal breaker. So he wants to return it. Fair enough. Now, just imagine there's a chemical smell, which will go in a couple of days, or there's 85p per kilowatt on the motorway or at a fast charger when somebody's told you it's cheap to charge, it's cheap to run. It's not. When somebody's told you it's cheap to service, it's not. When somebody's told you the discs will last 100,000 miles in the pads, they won't. Perhaps in exceptional circumstances they will, but for you, Joe Private, they will not. They will either corrode, warp, or seize up. That's the discs. When you replace discs, you put new pads in because they'll be grooved and they match the old discs, so you've got to put new pads in as well. Plus, if they've seized, you've probably got to put a new caliper on. So, trust me, they're not cheaper. The tyres will last 40,000 miles. They won't. I've seen them on for sale 13,000 mile on, and they've had a new set of tyres, or they're ready for a new set. They're bald. Again, with exceptional driving, you'll get 40,000 miles, but it's not the norm, as the EV shield suggests. It is not the norm. So you get this buyer's remorse and arguments. That, you've no idea how hard that is to overcome. You just cannot do it. It's impossible. You cannot overcome it. That person has somehow got to satisfy himself in a time in the future, like I did with Range Rovers. I didn't like Range Rovers. And then my friend asked me to drive her. And I drove it and I thought, Jesus Christ, this is the best car I've ever driven. And bearing in mind, I've driven some great cars. And this was only about 5 years ago. Until then, I didn't like Range Rovers. So you've got to overcome it yourself. And that for me was an experience I had when I was a young salesman and I went out in one of the first Range Rovers and it felt, you know, you went around a corner and you felt like it was going to fall over. So that's what did it for me. Now then, so I don't like customers. I don't like talking to people. How can I get around this? What I used to do, I used to go to, I love supercars, right from being a kid. When I was a kid, I used to deliver papers at the posh part of St Anne's, and people used to get the Financial Times and the Times and the Telegraph and the Sunday Times. In the Sunday Times, there was a company called Ian Anthony, and they sold Porsches. And I used to read their advert religiously every week. Stop. There's a block of flats there. I used to sit on the stairs and read the Sunday Times and familiarise myself with all the cars and the prices and so on. And this was when I was doing a paper round when I was like 11. I've always studied the papers. And then latterly, I used to go every Sunday morning, Caffè Nero in Preston, read the Sunday Times, read the motoring supplement, the magazine, look through all the cars. And I remember looking at leasing companies. And I looked at these leasing companies and I couldn't work it out because we didn't used to do a whole lot of finance or leasing, or there was no such thing as personal contract purchase then. It was lease purchase, which was like hire purchase with a balloon. And you were responsible for the balloon mostly. So if it was worth less, you know, tough. You've got to pay it or finance the car again. And it's still the same like that in some cases today. So I'm looking at these leasing companies and I see that for contract hire, it's the same price for a Rover 800 as it is for a Mercedes 200. And the Mercedes 200 is a lot more money and more prestigious. Now, probably 18 months after that, I went to work for Mercedes-Benz and I went to work as a salesman. Again, I took a step down from the job I was in and I went to work as a salesman. I didn't want any aggravation. I just wanted to work on my own, not get pestered, get on with it, go home at night. No phones ringing, no Barry, this has happened, or, you know, I just wanted an easy life. So I goes to work at Mercedes-Benz. The first thing I did was get familiar with the finance machine, contract hire. And I realised that I could do a Mercedes for less money than somebody could get a Rover for. You know, I could do it on the machine. But then I found one more thing. If you put a service contract on that Mercedes-Benz, the payments would actually go down. Because when they disposed of it, the car was worth more money. If you put a sunroof on the car, the payments would go down. If you put metallic paint on the car, the payments would go down. Those are all accessories that mattered. Well, metallic paint and a sunroof, they mattered. They put up the residual value. So therefore, that car was worth more. The gap between retail and what it was worth when it went to the block, the auction, was worth more, or you were going to lose less. So it was cheaper to get a dearer car with a full service contract, metallic paint and a sunroof. So then, plan B went into action. I don't like speaking to people. I want to sell cars. I want to make money. And so what did I do? I went and bought a fax machine. And I bought a fax machine that you could program it to send one fax after another. You could input all the numbers you wanted. Then I set about all the cars we'd got in stock, all the cars that were coming, the specifications. And I worked through them and I produced quotes for each one. Then I put a commission on it. Now, I was targeted for selling cars, also finance. You could sell 200% of your target, but if you didn't hit your finance target, you would get a nasty letter or a warning or whatever. So, contacted all the leasing companies, sent them out that night. Lo and behold, the next morning, phone starts ringing. I'm sat at my desk, the phone starts ringing, such and such a body from, I think one was Able Leasing. And I eventually made some good friends. And I was just getting calls all morning. And I was actually, because my message to them was, I'll give you this car for your customer and I'll pay you 500 quid for doing it. You introduce your customer to me, I'll finance it and I'll give you 500 quid. Bloody hell, I'd got my new car target and I'd got my finance target and I didn't have to speak to customers. I was selling more cars than anybody else in a very short space of time. In 6 months, I was promoted to sales manager. While I was sales manager, I was selling more cars than the salesman and being sales manager. So when people tell me about contract hire and lease purchase, just think about that. Honestly, if anybody knows about contract hire and lease purchase, it's me. You know, who's got two thumbs and knows about contract hire? It's me. Now then, one slight problem. You know, it's not all plain sailing. A friend of mine is a barrister, and they gave him an allowance. Now, what they expected him to go and get was probably a Rover 800 or something like that. I got him, and at the time, I think it was £350 a month. I got him a Mercedes SLK with every single extra on. Absolutely every extra. For £350 a month, the contract hire, with a full service contract. Loved it, his wife loved it. And then about a month later, he rang me up and he says, Baz, the benefit in kind payment on this Merc, it's costing me a fortune. You know, well, to be fair, the retail price of the car was probably about 60 grand, I would imagine. So he was having to pay benefit in kind. So it's not all plain sailing, but most people who want to keep up with the Joneses are prepared to pay the benefit in kind. Now, there used to be, you know, reps. We used to call them repmobiles. Ford Mondeo, repmobile. But then it went from Mondeo man to BMW man. And do you know why that is? Because BMWs had a higher residual value. So therefore, you could lease them and it would cost you less money than having a car half the price that devalued quicker. EVs are more expensive than a petrol or diesel. So therefore, the benefit in kind would be more. However, when they tried to push EVs on everybody, first of all, I think you could get 130% against your tax, which was a fortune, and everybody started running around in Porsche Taycans. I have a friend who has a nursing home. They had a £30,000 car before. All of a sudden, they could get a Porsche Taycan, and they could write the profit off the tax. And it was the best car they'd ever had until they started depreciating, then not so much. That's how contract hire works. It's the car cost, what they expect a future value. So you've got to pay that bit off and some interest and some profit. So consequently, EVs, when they were holding the price, the leases were cheap because they would expect not to lose a whole lot. So they were dead cheap. But now, when they start losing a whole lot, then the prices go up. That's not the problem. The problem is that these EVs started losing a whole lot before the experts cottoned onto it. So loads of people got caught out. Leasing companies blew a fortune. hire car companies that do short-term hires and just expect basically to, you know, keep them 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, hire them out a few times, and then what they've brought in hires is more than what they have to pay out on a lease or a HP or however they finance it. But all that stopped happening. Then they proved to be dearer to repair. The likes of Hertz cancelled their orders. There's a load of Polestars, they were cancelled too. And all of a sudden there's more cars available that shouldn't have been. Then there was the lies. They were saying there was a big waiting list, and really speaking, the only waiting list there was to get onto an airfield and park up the pre-registered vehicle. It just, the perfect storm. Everything happened. More cars, depreciating faster, lies kind of being exposed in the motor trade, people knowing, profit warnings, and then of course we get the EV leasing companies, you know, big names going bang. Now, they've got, I don't wish things on anybody really, but leasing companies are basically leeches on car dealers. They are a car dealer's worst nightmare. What happens with leasing companies is they tell the customers, go to your local dealer, test drive it, you know, get all the prices, get the spec that you want, but come back to us. Get a price if you want, come back to us and I'll beat it. So what the customer does, he comes and he wastes your time. You're out for a test drive, he's in your demonstrator. The garage has, you know, when I was at Mercedes, there's a big gym palace. We'd got loads of mechanics, parts, big showroom, double floor, loads of equipment, loads of machines, loads of stock. It was just phenomenally expensive to open the doors every morning. You know, it was just horrific. And these leeching companies were sending customers, were telling them to come, and all salesmen, and you know, at the time when I was a salesman, I was getting fed up of it, because you'd take them out for a drive, you'd spec all the car up, they're right, well, I'll just have a think about it. You ring them up a couple of days. Oh, I forgot to tell you, it's a company car and head office are ordering it. But I've told them about you, so they might contact you. Might. Right. What's the name of the person who buys it? Oh, well, do you know, I'm not sure. So basically, you just wasted your time. So leasing companies are a bane in a salesman's life. You know, Ling, I mean, I talked to Ling. She was on the Dragon's Den and she ripped him a new one, to be honest, and she's quite funny. I've spoken to her and I've fallen out with her and I've spoken to her again. She says things that I don't like, it upsets me. But now, she sold a leasing company. She saw what was going to happen with COVID. She sold a farm. She knew, she could see into the future, that girl. And she's riding around the world now. Leasing companies. So now leasing companies, it's funny, the salesman can't be bothered now. From what I can see, the salesman can't be bothered because they know that trying to sell EVs is like flogging a dead horse. They can't be bothered. You mention an EV to them, they couldn't give a shit. They really couldn't. And that's what's happening. But now the EV leasing companies, oh, they're on. They're Auto Trader, leasing company. They're all on. The BVRLA, oh yeah. British Vehicle Rental shitheads, whatever. Piss up in a brewery springs to mind. They're all, oh, EVs must succeed, EVs must succeed, you've got to do this, we've got to have incentives. Do you know why? Because they'll go skint. If EVs don't succeed, they'll go skint. They're calling all sorts of stuff, want all sorts of subsidies, because they'll go skint. I have another good friend, very good friend, who set up a leasing company in a beautiful Well, it's like a barn, a converted barn. You know, she was in a converted barn with half a dozen employees, leasing vehicles with no capital outlay whatsoever. And then we're at Mercedes-Benz with millions of pounds, millions and millions of pounds, tied up, and doing the same thing. But they could do it better. They could work off 200, 300 quid a deal. We couldn't. We'd go skinned. So that's the leasing companies. Now the leasing companies are calling for action. So let's just go here. This article, Fleet News, 18th of July 2024, by Andrew Ryan. The UK's vehicle leasing and rental industry is facing an existential threat due to the collapse in battery electric vehicle residual values, the BVRLA have warned. Well, has not the right word, but anyway, how do you like it, boys? After all the crap that you've put the dealers through, all the money you've leached off them, boots on the other foot now. Now you're calling for action. After increasing through and immediately after the COVID pandemic, the industry has seen battery electric vehicle RVs drop by around 50 percentage points since August 2002, including a fall of around 25 to 30 percentage points over the past year. The slump in values has been caused by strong supply into the company car and salary sacrifice sectors, but only limited demand when the vehicles hit the used market. Well, that's the 18th of July 2024. But of course we know that new to 12-month-old vehicles, sales have gone up by 52%, and 3 to 5-year-old vehicles, sales have gone up by 138%. So these people must be wrong. I mean, what other explanation could there be? The real concern is those depreciation losses that members are seeing. Yes, you can say that there are fantastic bargains out there for used buyers. A fantastic bargain for a used buyer means that somebody's blown their brains out when they bought it new. But that depreciation burden that members are having to bear is eventually going to have to be resolved in higher new vehicle lease rates, which is not good for the EV transition. Of course it's not. They're going to go up. So all the people who say, oh, I lease my car, I know how much it's going to cost. Yeah, you do now, but in future it will go up. The other thing about lease purchase, personal contract purchase, is the idea is you're on the hook. Once you've got a personal contract purchase, you're on the hook, because after 3 years, you've got a massive residual value which you either have to pay off, refinance, or give the car back if it's guaranteed. If your car's not worth that, you can give it back. Yeah, fine, give it back. What are you going to do for your deposit? Because most people strap themselves up to a payment that they can afford, like a phone. And then at the end of the contract, they get a new one. And they don't miss it. They set that money aside. But all of a sudden, at the end, you've got a really nice car. You've had your Tesla for the last 3 years. Mr. Tebbett, you've had your Tesla for the last 3 years. And then this person, he had a Nissan Leaf, went up to a Tesla. The next one, no doubt, a Nissan Leaf will be the same price. So that's what you have to consider. At the end of the contract purchase, the idea is that your car that you've been paying for 3 years, that your car is worth more than the GFV, guaranteed future value, because then that money, you go and part exchange it. It's painless. You go and part exchange it. The equity goes as the deposit on your new car. Then you drive off in something that should really be about the same value or a bit more than the one you've got. But that's not going to happen. So what's happening now is people are coming to the end of the contract. The car's worth less. So there's no equity. There's no point financing it. There's no point buying it because it's worth less. So they're handing it back to the leasing companies. The leasing companies are then putting in the auction, and all this absolute shite about EVs stabilising, they're just not. They're just not. So the leasing companies are losing the shirt. Right, so we'll go on to the next one. Motor finance online. Leasing drives EV adoption, but BVRLA warns of challenges ahead. This is October the 10th, 2024. Leasing is emerging as a key driver of electric vehicle adoption, with private motorists beginning to close the gap on businesses, according to the British Vehicle Rental and Leasing Association. The latest Leasing Outlook report shows that in Q2 2024, battery electric vehicles accounted for 21% of new personal contract hire PCH leases, aligning with zero-emission vehicle ZEV mandate targets. However, the BVRLA has raised concerns that this momentum may be short-lived if the used EV market remains unstable. No, oh, hang on, no, sorry. It's stabilised. But prices have stabilised. It's in the news. They've stabilised. Cap, they've stabilised. They've actually gone up. EVs have gone up. So why are these people, who are actually the ones that are disposing of vehicles in auctions, why do they think that the market's unstable? They need educating, don't they? They need one of these EV shills. They need Quentin to tell them that they only think the cars have gone down. They only think they're losing money when EVs are very, very popular and they've gone up. Who do they put in charge of these places? They're stupid. Ask Quentin. Ask Mark. Ask Baldy and Dull from the Climate Intelligence Unit about how EVs are going on. Because they all know they don't sell cars. They don't lease them. But somehow they know. It's amazing because they know more than I do, and I've been in the job 50 years, so I don't understand it. But anyway, you know, I didn't say I was clever. The BVRLA's leasing fleet expanded by 3% year on year, with growth driven by a 4.1% rise in car leasing, while demand for vans stayed flat. In contrast, private demand for leasing has weakened, with personal contract hire contracts down 13.2% year on year due to cost of living pressures. It's not due to cost of living pressures. What it's due to is the EVs bombing and adding to their cost of living pressures. If they got an ICE car, that wouldn't have happened. You know, let's just be... These people, I'm not clever. You may have gathered that. But also, I'm not clever. I'm not academically clever, but I'm not stupid either. And wherever I've been in the motor trade, I've always been the best. Whether you believe it or not, I have. However, the BVRLA warns that lack of significant incentives for private EV buyers could slow future growth in this area, especially as leasing companies face new challenges posed by falling used EV values. But they've stabilised. They've stabilised and they're going up. Like, you know, the SMMT report. Oh, new EVs, they're going up, diesels are going down. Private people are buying more diesels now. Sales of diesels to private people have gone up. Why do you think that is? Europe's EV leasing model facing strain. Leasing companies in Europe are doubling, listen to that again, leasing companies in Europe are doubling EV prices due to low resale values, threatening to exit the market if pushed too fast towards full electrification. Leasing firms in Europe are grappling with increasing challenges as they face declining resale values for electric vehicles, EVs in brackets. These firms, essential to the region's auto market, have doubled EV lease prices over the last 3 years. Meanwhile, the share of electric vehicles in the European leasing market is rapidly increasing, with EVs accounting for more than 20% of all new leased vehicles as of 2023. What do you think that's going to do? Any ideas? Low resale prices for EVs. Resale prices for EVs in Britain and Germany in the first week of July were significantly lower than before the global pandemic. Blimey. Well, price index of petrol cars. I hope you're all watching this. So, Britain and Germany. I don't. What do you reckon to that? Does that look like it's stabilised? Unless, hang on a second. Oh, yeah, iPad. Well, unfortunately, look, you can't accidentally get. Unfortunately, I can't accidentally get it the wrong way up to make you feel better if you've got an EV. Look, my iPad corrects it. That's it. That's petrol cars. That's EVs there. Franz Klammer couldn't ski down that. Not the British one anyway. He's probably got a chance of the German one. Anatomy of a failed EV startup. Zevi, a startup that offered creative finances to democratise electric vehicle access, shut down recently. The firm's founder has a lot to say about why. Soaring interest rates, unexpected fluctuations in the EV market made the fledgling business untenable by early 2024. Now again, some of the shills you'll remember, electrics and the special offers. I've had some offers sent to me. There, look. I mean, what's that? A Mazda MX-30. Range 124 miles. 5,000 miles a year. 48 months. Personal, £222.95, so that's inclusive of VAT. Or business, 185.79, exclusive of VAT. Deposit, £2,675, or the initial rental. 5,000 mile a year. I mean, you know, you're far better. I've got a friend who's just started a new job, and instead of getting a company car, they've got a travel allowance, or, you know, allowance towards a car. They're just going to get a diesel. There's a chap on Twitter, another chap who I really don't like. I took an instant dislike when I looked at him, when I heard him, and I tried to be nice. To him, but he was on. The car trade is very close to my heart. I love it. I've been in it all my life. I've had a great life, and I've had some fantastic times. Some, you know, stories that you just wouldn't believe, but are also funny too. So when somebody calls the motor trade, or when somebody tries to knock it down, it really pisses me off. And this chap had bought a Renault Zoe. Renault Zoes are absolutely shit. You look at MOTs on Renault Zoes, and honestly, if you had any sense, you wouldn't let your family in it. It was supposedly described as an ideal first car, first EV for somebody. Honestly, if I wouldn't let anybody in one. Well, it's ideal for him, to be fair. He deserves it. But he bought a Renault Zoe at a knockdown price and said, he was boasting about it on Twitter, And I worked out how much the original owner had lost and how much it had cost them, and how much petrol they could have bought instead of buying that. And he said, I don't care about the motor trade. Wound me up even more. Don't care about the motor trade, fair enough. Who do you think is going to be selling your cars? Where do you think you're going to be getting cheap vehicles from? You know, there can only be so many leasing companies collapse before people just say, all right, enough's enough. You know, this one, it was an ex-Onto car, this blooming, and it was dropping at the rate of £700 a month when I checked it. £700 a month for a little car. It's unheard of. Electric vehicle leasing group Onto collapses after L&G pulls the plug. Well, no wonder they pulled the plug. They were hemorrhaging money. You know, an electric car leasing company which raised tens of millions of pounds from backers such as Legal & General has crashed into administration. Sky News has learnt that Onto Holdings, which secured new capital injections as recently as 3 months ago, so they ripped people off 3 months ago, called in Teneo Financial Advisory earlier on Monday. Onto, which had been running a sale process with advisors at Deloitte in recent weeks, had assembled a fleet of 7,000 EVs and a subscriber base of 20,000 customers. And they still went skint. Why? They've got 20,000 customers, they'd only got 7,000 cars. How did they go skint? They've got nearly 3 customers per car. How did they go skint? Because the EVs were depreciating quicker and more than they could charge to hire them out. You know, that's it. LG committed 22.5 million in May and June on top of previous funding. So they burnt through another 22.5 million. It don't bear thinking about. But when the tiny ones were dropping 700 quid, and you know, Tesla's dropped 1,400 quid in a day at one stage. It's just unbelievable. L&G also led a 60 million funding round for Onto a year ago, saying that at that time it was an ambitious company with a talented management team that will play a vital role in accelerating the transition to electric vehicles. Talented management role. So, you've all seen Dragon's Den. A few years ago, a chap rang me up and he was a business angel. And he had an idea for disrupting the motor trade. By disrupting, it means you've got your customer, you've got your garage where he goes to buy, he does all the thing, but you disrupt the sales process. You nip in. After he's been in the garage and done all that, you nip in and nick the customer. You know, how long these people think that garages will put up with this? How long? They might put up with it forever. They might be really stupid. But they won't be able to survive. They'll just go skint. So he asked me if I'd go and work for him. And I said, no. And he says, why not? I said, because... And it was very good money. Very good. Thinking about it, I should have done it. He says, why not? Why won't you? I said, because I hate people like you. You're like, I said, you just, you know, you're just like leeches. You're just sucking the life out of the motor trade. Hopefully that's approached depreciation from the leasing company side. And if you now think that the leasing companies will keep absorbing losses so that you can have a cheap personal contract purchase on an EV, you are sadly mistaken. It can't go on. And when it can't go on any longer, and those cars come back, then there will be a massive race to the bottom. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.